why I chose a lifestyle of daily self-care and morning time. So this is going to be a little series about my morning time, how I start my day each day. My friend Maddie was asking me, she's wanting to expand that part of her relationship with herself, how she greets herself each morning, and was asking me and another friend of ours, what does our morning time look like? And I know on my channel I've mentioned my morning time many times. I swear by it, I absolutely do. But I don't think I've ever really gone in depth on the story of morning time. So that is what this series will be. And this first question, these are Maddie's questions. I had her write them down for me so that I'm like, here, just let me know what you want to know. I'll tell you anything. As Macklemore says, I'm an open book, but sometimes I'm hard to read. So yeah, you want to know something, you just ask and I'll tell you. Okay, so why? Why do I do morning time every day? And this is it's a big story. That's a big question for me personally. And I think where I'm going to start is that basically I do daily morning time, and I'm going to explain all about what that entails. But the reason I do it is because by nature I am emotionally unstable. I have extreme fluctuations in my energy. I have been clinically diagnosed with a cornucopia of different ideas, different labels, and none of the labels ever made me feel any better, in terms of, okay, there's a name for it, but how does that actually help me? I tried lots of different medications and had some pretty scary experiences with several of them, and eventually came to a point in my early 20s where I it just was too scary to take the meds anymore. All the side effects that they tell you, like how it's, mood stabilizers and sleeping pills and antidepressants and all of these different kinds of interventions. And I'm not saying this to mess with anybody else who is taking them at all, but they tell you all the side effects as far as you could become suicidal because you're taking this medication. It could basically get worse. And that was what happened. When I took the meds, it got worse. And it became very clear after a few years of that this is not a good idea for me. And so not because I was doing daily self-care, but because I was too scared to keep taking the meds, I worked to stop all of that. And then there was a chunk of time that I would say was maybe 5 years where I essentially was self-medicating with over-the-counter type things, like food, for example. I went to Dallas, I moved there after school, and I self-medicated and gained 40 pounds in a year, and that was also clearly not working. So then I worked to okay, so get my eating together, and that just meant okay, I need something else to medicate with, and that led into a dating spree. So I've explored lots of various mood stabilizers or self-medication. I've also explored pharmaceutical medication, and all of this was kind of interspersed with, I would say, especially once I got to Dallas, so into my mid 20s, I was everybody, you look around at where I worked, which there's 500 people there, and everybody is in shape. Everybody is like full hair and makeup and like designer outfit to work every day. Like that was the culture that I worked in. And so, especially that first year, gaining all that weight, I was extremely insecure, which again was only adding to my like extreme emotional instability, my extreme unhappiness. And so, in the getting my eating together, I also started exercising, and that started these little bouts of regular exercise, which was at that time was like definitely part of what I considered my self-care. And so I would go for like a month or 2 months or even 3 or 4 sometimes, and like would be exercising regularly and like eating well. And I would go from emotionally unstable, like a complete mess where any little thing could set me off at any moment, to like after I got like 2 3 weeks of like regular self-care under my belt, I was like stable. I was like a quote unquote normal person. And I watched myself go through that cycle of basically like, oh, I'm better now, so I don't need my medicine. Like, I would feel so good that I would be ready to socialize. I would be ready to like get out there and like put myself out there and be more social. And yeah, so I would start doing a lot more peopling because I felt so good. And normally I felt awful, so I would just completely isolate myself. So, with even a little bit of feeling better, my social calendar got a lot heavier. And with that, it was basically like, again, uninvesting my energy from my daily self care and putting it into socializing with people, which was so fun and I felt good. And after a few weeks of socializing with people and not taking care of myself, I was back into the roller coaster. I was back into the emotional instability, the ups and the downs. And at the same time, kind of like that was my personal life and like social life. At work, I was going through something very similar where I would work and work and work and work and work and eventually hit a stage of burnout where I felt like I just like was lethargic, like I can't do this anymore. And I would have to end up taking a little bit of time off work. And so it was like that was happening simultaneously. I just could not figure out how to stabilize my energy so that I could be a consistent mood. I could bring a consistent work ethic. It was like it was all or nothing, and I couldn't figure out how to get the pendulum to just freaking stay in the center. It was like one extreme or the other. And so yeah, I was having this cycle of self-care basically where I would do it a little while and then I'd feel better and so I'd quit. And with the quit, I would eventually crash, and with the crash, I would be at my wit's end. I would be feeling so bad that I would start daily self-care again, and then I would feel better, and then I would quit, and then I would crash. And in the crash, I would feel so awful that I would start daily self care again. And this went on for, I'm gonna say, roughly like 2012 to 2016. It's like 4 years worth of like, do a month or two and then quit for a month or two, and then do a month or two and quit for a month or two. And every single time I would crash, every single time. And then that led to early 2016 getting into this relationship and having it be so emotionally intense, and the on again, off again part of it, I was like just so consumed by this relationship that it was a very extended period of no daily self-care, again in favor of reinvesting that energy all completely into that relationship. And so after that extended like 6 7 8 months of not doing my daily self-care, my jealousy and therefore my emotional problems were at what I would call my all-time high. Like I was what felt like being ripped apart inside. And it left me like on a Thursday, I was crying in a ball on my living room floor. Like crying doesn't do it justice. I was wailing. I was like like an animal that just needed to be shot and put out of its misery, and that's where my headspace was. Friday, I go see a new therapist for an emergency session. She was so gracious with me and so amazing. Um, and she introduced me to Louise Hay's deservability treatment. I'm going to link that video down below. Um, that was Friday. And then Saturday morning, July 9th, 2016, I woke up with a sharp level of clarity that morning. And I mean, my eyes popped open and I was like awake for maybe the first time ever. And the mood was anger. I was so angry at myself because I had the answer for years. I knew, I don't recommend daily anger or daily anger. I don't recommend anger and being mad at yourself, but this is how it came through for me. It was like I had the answer for years. I watched myself for years take good care of myself and feel amazing, and then quit and crash, and then take good care of myself and feel amazing, and then quit and crash. I watched myself do it and I let it go on. And that morning, I woke up and I said, I am so fucking sick of living like this. I'm done. Either I'm gonna have a happy life or I'm not gonna have a life. And that day, remember, I had received the deservability treatment the day before, and I had read it in the mirror to myself a couple of times. It's a long, like 5 paragraphs of affirmations about your deservability and your worth, your inherent worthiness as a person on this planet. And so I had that tool, and I had I had dabbled in meditation, like using guided meditations, and so I knew a little bit about that, enough to go onto YouTube and search for guided meditations that I could listen to. But my plan for that weekend was to do self-care all day Saturday and all day Sunday, and to basically, like, this is day one. This is day one of the rest of my life. And at that point, I was counting my days as like, like an alcoholic who is trying to put down alcohol and is counting the days that they're keeping themselves sober. I was treating not taking care of myself like my addiction. And every day that I took care of myself was another day of being sober. So I counted my days, and that July 9th, 2016, that was day one. And I, that was, 6 years ago. And I'm also going to answer the question, do I ever skip a morning? Do I ever go a day without doing my morning time? Now, like, I explained, there was years of that, of course, yes. But in these last like 6+ years at this point, I'm recording this September 1st of 2022. Yes, I have skipped mornings. I've skipped 20 mornings in a row. In early 2018, when my grocery store opened, and what that looked like as far as like those days, what I was doing was like getting up and being at the store by like 6 a.m. to get ready for it to open at 7, and then mostly being there until like 8 o'clock at night. And so I was there. I worked every day, the full, like, I mean, we were open 87 hours a week when we started, and I was there most of the time those first few weeks. And so I did not do daily self-care. I gave it all to this business that is a newborn, right? Like it's a brand new baby. It just opened. I built it for 10 months and now it's here, and I gave it all to my baby, my business. And on the 20th day, I showed up to work, and I had been there for maybe 15 minutes, and I was on like the third person who was pissing me off, and I wanted to punch them in the face. I went upstairs, and somebody else was there to give me another piece of like, and this and this, and I just like had a bit of a snap. I I looked around at them and I said, I can't do this. I'm going to go home and I'll be back tomorrow. And I went home, and it was like, 15 minutes into my day. It was like 7:30 in the morning. And yeah, I can't do this. I can't. I ran my gas tank empty again. And at that point, I had almost 2 years. If I had made it to July of 2018, I would have had every single day for 2 years under my belt. So instead, it was like early 600s, I think, as far as how many days I had gone. And going home on the 20th day, that was day one. Again, I'm back in the spot that I said I would never be again. Here I am. It was a very humbling day. After 2 years of every single day taking care of myself, filling my gas tank, it only took 20 for it all to come crashing down. Like, I have no doubt that if I had stayed that day at the store and pushed through it, I would have exploded on at least one person. If not, I would have detonated in front of multiple people. And that is not productive as far as I'm trying to be the CEO and manager of this business. I don't need the public or my employees, for that matter, witnessing a meltdown. And I mean, I've had meltdowns my whole life, emotional meltdowns where I bottled it or I let it get to the point where I hit my breaking point and now it's a meltdown. And so I recognized through my extreme level of agitation with every single thing that was coming into my awareness that morning, I recognized, holy shit, I'm headed for a meltdown. I better go home and have that in private. And I did. I came home and I cried and cried and cried and cried about how I had built such a stable level of well-being for myself. And again, I threw it away. I didn't have time for that. And they had to fend for themselves that day. And they did okay. The store is still there. It's still standing the next day. It was all fine. But I know that, again, if I had kept pushing, the amount of downtime that I would have needed to recover would have just gotten longer and longer and longer. And that was my first time of taking a day off after the store opened. And then from there, I was able to take most Tuesdays off. Every once in a while, it would get into a situation where it had been a few weeks since I had taken a day off. And the only way I was even able to get through that, working 7 days a week for weeks on end, was because I never stopped morning time again. So the only thing I'll say about skipping is, I don't do the same exact routine every single day. And I'm going to talk a whole lot more about that when I get into the how and the what and the where and the when. But I don't do the same thing every day. So it's like instead of skipping, downsize. Instead of doing the full-blown thing like what I do on a day where I have nothing else going on and I'm just going to lavish myself in pampering, I might do several hours worth of stuff because it's fun and it feels good and it's interesting and all of that. But on a day where, either my brain is checked out or my energy is low, maybe I write a couple things on a gratitude list and call it good. Maybe I pull a few tarot cards and write them down in my journal and any reflections they might trigger and okay, call it good. So basically you can downsize to 5, 10, 15 minutes and call it good. And you didn't skip yourself, I personally have a bad habit of getting consumed in work and relationships and all of that. And I know that about myself at this point. So when I do my morning time every day, that is my anchoring into myself. It's my checking in with myself. And then I know I'm going to have that same anchor point tomorrow morning and then again the next day. And in that relationship in 2016, I went months without looking into myself. I went months of like being focused only on work and relationship, work and relationship, work and relationship, and that's it. And it almost killed me. Literally, I was contemplating my own end. And as much as I've, like, okay, so now, since that was the last time I skipped was like those 20 days in early 2018. Now it's, September of 2022. And no, I've done self-care. I've done my morning time every single day. Sometimes, sometimes my morning time, it doesn't happen until 8:45 in the evening because we do our best and we feel for what we can reach for that feels good. And sometimes, like, that is zoning out. Sometimes that is numbing. But it seems like even on those days where I just I can't find anything that's fun other than like watching some documentary about the Ace family on YouTube or something like that. Like, that's what I want to do. I want to sit here and watch murder mystery makeup all day, okay? So sue me. And even on those days, it's like at some point it clicks. That's like, you did such a good job today focusing on your energy and giving it what it felt like it needed. And then I'm usually inspired to like write a little bit of gratitude in my journal. So I get out my journal and I'm like, well, it's 8:30 at night. The day's almost over, but I really just had to say, like, I'm so grateful that I was so easy on myself today and I surrendered to where my energy was, and I do feel better. I feel like the dust kind of settled thanks to not really doing anything today. So it's perfectly 100% okay to be as flexible as you possibly need to be so that you can do some kind of anchoring into yourself every day. So whether it truly happens in the morning or there is a different time or you're doing 5 hours worth of stuff or 5 minutes worth of stuff, a little bit of attention goes a long way. It truly does, and lets us flow with ourselves, lets us stabilize our mood, lets us have a more consistent level of energy so that we can do more of the things that we want to do. Like back when I was so unstable, I couldn't, even for the first like 4 or 5 years of like my self-awareness, self-care journey, like there was no way I could ever help anybody else because I was so inconsistent with it. My moods and my energy were so inconsistent that like putting something on the calendar and planning that like, okay, I'm going to show up and like teach a session about something on Saturday at 11 a.m. I'm like, I can't promise that. I mean, I feel shitty a good chunk of the time, like even a majority of the time still. So it wasn't until just the last couple years that I feel like, I mean, and so think about it, like that meant after I restarted self-care, it took me 2 more years to get to a place where 4 years mostly of consistent self-care, and I was relatively confident that I can schedule a date and time and I can feel good when it comes and that I'll feel good to show up and do something with that date and time. So yeah, it's been a journey with my morning time and my emotional stability, my energy management. And at this point, I mean, yes, I do my morning time, but more than that, I really truly believe and live a lifestyle of energy management is my full-time job. That's what I'm here to do, is to manage my energy and give it what it needs, because as I give it what it needs, it's healing me. There's so much rich abundance in taking care of your energy and seeing what's possible when you elevate it into a consistently positive frequency. It's like the whole world opens up into something truly magical that before all of this I never would have been able to imagine.